I should have started that before. Never mind. That's all right. It's all a bit suck it and see how it all goes here. So we've got the basic shape of the house, and then in here there's this tree that sits in there. The house has a little terrace outside, as you can see, and if you look at where the terrace, this line of the terrace through here is on the right hand side of the vertical. Can you see that? You know, so it kind of comes up like that, and then that comes down. People understand all that. So I'm measuring these two things in relation to each other. That terrace pushes out slightly. There's also a little thing that sits up there. And then this is a staircase. Can you see that? One of the troubles is that when you, I think maybe it's not a staircase. Maybe the staircase is down here. I can't tell. Is there a staircase up the side of that walkway? I can't see from here. Does it go up or does it just come down? Doesn't matter.
I think it just comes down.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. So, and then there's a little chimney on the top. So, you know, people say, when do you know when the drawing's finished? And I say, well, if you start with the focal point, it's almost always finished, because you can say, well, that's the drawing. It's just this little house that sits on there. And then we've got to start, you know, you might just look at the trees and just draw the outline of the trees coming through. Because I think the next important line is that line of the rock down here, the rock that's below the house. So you can see that there's a point just lower than the, if you draw a line down from here, right, this corner of the building down here, that dimension there is a similar dimension to the length of the house where the rock starts. And so the rock comes down and then it slopes down past there, and then it comes out past the edge of the house and it's sort of down around here. And then that just sort of comes up. And then the next one is the rock. You can see it comes up through there. Now I'm just going to go fast, people, because I've got to go. But
it's not already fast. I'm still on the chimney.
Yeah, it's all right. No, but the point is, you can then have a go at this later on. You know, you can have a bit of a practice. What I'm trying to sort of communicate is just the sequence of the drawing. So now you can tell that you can see where the house is in relation to the landscape, and then you can. So all the detail on the rocks, you know, I'm not too bothered by any of that at the moment. The next thing, maybe we'll pause for a second. Now, if you want to draw ink onto the page, right, that's fine as well. I think Nick's doing that. There's no problem doing that. It's all good. Oh, it's pencil, is it? Okay, that's fine. The blue pencil, is it? Yeah, right. But you can see, you know, I've got a couple of things wrong. And so I could start to add in some of the detail of some of the windows. That can come later, of course, because, you know, once you get the shape of the house done, you can come back and do the detail later. And I quite like, in some ways, to sort of get a bit more an overview, not just finish the house completely and then go to the next thing, but to block up an overview and then come in to look at some details. Because I don't tend to be completely disciplined about where I draw it from, other than starting here. I might then go and do some detail on the trees, and then come and do some detail around the rocks of the house. There's vegetation in there, and there's a window in behind here. And there's a sort of Now, sometimes when I draw in pencil, you start with colours that sort of relate to the colour of what I'm drawing. So, you know, I might do some, I could have drawn the house in red to start with that for the sake of the process. Or not, and I might come back and put more red on later. Some of it's a bit of a suck it and see approach. The next important part of the drawing, I think, is the little jetty. You can see the little walkway that runs on the rocks. That's quite characteristic of Norway, these sort of little jetties and diving boards. And sometimes they have a thermometer that hangs off the edge of the jetty, and Lil's parents have one of those. So before you go for a swim, you're often checking the temperature of the water, which is kind of interesting. And you can see there's a little ladder that runs down into the water. And so you can start to draw the supports behind it. And you can, if you look carefully at the supports, you'll see the ones at the back are shorter, obviously, because they're further up the rock. Okay, so you get the sense of all of that, and then below that, and that's all. And I think there's some wires that come down from there, as I remember. And then there's that sort of darker sort of drainage area that feeds down, and the tannins of the vegetation in part make it all dark in there. But if you look carefully at the rocks, you'll see little bits of vegetation popping through, lots of kind of fissures and folds or cracks or whatever, and then that comes up in there. And then the crowning glory is the foreground. So everything's got to have a good foreground. You can also put the stuff in the background if you want to, like the hills in the background. They're quite nice to just show the width of the fjord. It's about 4 k's across, in case you're wondering. I think it's 4 k's, I'm not sure actually. I have been across it many times on various boats. Now, the geometry of the boat is quite tricky to draw. You ran out of room. So, there's no simple answer for the boat, but you know that boats generally, they're square at the back, and they go out slightly, then come back into a point. So you've got to try to get that shape of the boat that you can have a little picture in your head of on that angle, so it looks like you're looking across the boat, not into it. So that's the hardest part of the drawing to get right in terms of the geometry of the boat. Because if you make the main lines going along the length of the boat too far apart, the boat will look like it's tilting towards you. And if you do it too close together, it will look like it's tilted back the other way. So you just have to have a go, basically. And the boat finishes down through there, and then it's got a and then of course there's that, and then there's the water that comes through, and then the water that comes up through there, and that's all dark in there. There's some oars on the rear as well, which is quite nice. And of course there's a bit of unmown, nothingness grass in the foreground. So there you go. It's all rough and ready. That's okay. So we can probably just I'll take a break for a minute while you people are catching up. Now the benefit I've got is I've brought this about 5 times in my life. So, actually 3 times, so 4 times now since that's the 4th one. Yep, trees, yep. Look at that weird colour, it's weird. That colour of purple. See, now you've got the classic issue of, talk about anchoring the scene, is that everybody wants to draw it like you're looking down at it.
Yeah, my line's going up.
Yeah, you've got to get down, so it's obvious, you can see it is going down. But you've got to be disciplined about that. And I'll probably start again quickly. You've had a go at the thing, but it's just important that you sort of anchor yourself in the place. Because to me, what you're trying to communicate is, it's an honourable view looking across the building.
Yeah.
It's not a view looking up from a hill. Yep. show you the next little bit. Idle standby. TV will turn off while idle standby. Press a button to keep it on.
If you press the circle in the middle of the remote, it goes.
Yeah. So this is just this basic setup, okay? So now, and I'm just using a thick pen because I want you to be able to see what I'm drawing. I wouldn't typically draw with these pens, but they're actually quite nice to draw with. These are the outlines. And there's a couple of things that I'll just talk about, and I didn't have time to go through sort of lines, but you know, no, it's the 0.6 one. But you don't have to do that. The 0.4 is fine. It's just you won't see it as much from as a sort of a demonstration. But you can see what I'm doing is I'm just doing some sort of curly lines, and they kind of don't always, they're not continuous. You can see there's a, you know, there's just like gaps here and there. So some of these lines are the ones you've got to really practice. And then there's like a vegetation kind of texture that you can, you know, do it with curly lines that loop on each other. And you can see I'm trying to get it's darker in there. You know, we talked about it's darker just above the line, and you can use dots, and so you're getting a sense of the texture of the building, and then looking at the way that all the trees are working. When you're looking at the vegetation, some parts are darker than other parts. And if I'm doing sort of darker tones like this, if you do the lines that are like in the same angle as the rocks and things, obviously makes a bit of sense. And then the vegetation near the house, you know, you can make that a bit darker to sort of accentuate the house line. And there's a white window frame. The windows are quite dark, so you can just put some of those dark windows in. So the idea is that when you're ready, you can just go over the line work with a pen. Now you don't need to be super accurate with the pencil work, because you can fix it up with the line work later on. You can just change things slightly or whatever, and that's not a problem, and it actually makes the drawing look in some ways a bit more interesting. But you can see the supports of the stuff under here are quite light against the background behind, so I'm going to make them quite dark in behind there. When I first drew this, I didn't put the flagpole on. I got into trouble from the Norwegians. It was like a sin against the country. It's quite amusing. So one thing you can do then, and I'm just going to do this quickly because I'm running a bit short of time, is you can get a darker pencil. You can start to put on some, I like some black tones from the line work of the pen on the drawing. I think that gives it a nice gutsiness. But at the same time, you can build some tones. Add more detail. So I've got my favourite indigo pencil, which I like, which basically before you sit down, Mate, can you just take a picture of the whole group?
Yes.
Everyone's so
Do you want to
busy.
use my phone? I'll just text it to you.
Sure. Everyone's so busy, I don't want to stop them to
Smile. I took some candles. Now I'm enjoying the smile.
the tonal values of the trees are generally fairly dark. I mean, a lot of it's not, even though it's lighter, it's not like it's bright light. So you can start to just, with a darker pen of any colour, or with the same pen you've got, but just starting pencil you've got, starting to now there's probably boards on the house. I guess they're horizontal, I don't know. So I might just draw them on just for the sake of making the house a bit more visible against the... And then you can just add more detail at the front with just lines like this for the grass that's not mown. And you can see what you can do with the pen like this is you can push hard and flick off the page. So you can see that the top of it is a thinner line. You see it's darker at the bottom. So that relates to the way the grass is working. It's got points on the top, obviously. So, and there's different kind of angles for it. There's various bits of texture and a bit of, and then there's some little bits of sort of dots in the water you can sort of see. I don't normally put extra colour on necessarily, but just for the sake of the drawing.
So with the windows, you didn't really even do the outline, you sort of just shaded the...
Yeah. So it's just the you're just drawing the tones to some extent, and it's partly because when you're drawing from a photograph, you can't see it as well. From life, you can see more clearly what you're drawing. You get a better sense of all the detail. But you don't need to draw the outline of the whole window. You just get a thicker pen and just do you know, just do that, and you can sort of get the idea of what it's trying to be and to do. And then if you want to get, you know, some texture and tone, you can just put some dots and other curvy things on the, you know, on the vegetation. Curvy things, there's a technical term. But there's some nice things about this view. The you know, the contrast of the darkness across here, the contrast with the boat, the darkness in here as this line comes up and that sort of comes down. And then this is pushing forward. There's some very nice visual elements to the scene, which there's a little thing in the boat there, which I think are quite nice. And quite a lot of lines in the rocks, which you can start to pick up. Now, if you look carefully at what I've drawn, see that little frame there? Completely the wrong position. It actually should be closer in front of the house. You've got that wrong completely. Yeah, thank you, Magda. No, but it just goes to show that you get stuff wrong. You know, you don't kind of, you're looking, but you're not.
You need to keep going back to have another look.
Yeah, well, with the house drawn, you can anchor yourself back. So you look at how far does the rock come out from the length of the house? How far down are you to get to the boat? So you're all observing like that, you know, is it the same height of the house? It's 3 times the height of the house or whatever. And so it is a challenge to keep yourself on the straight and narrow, as it were. So I need to go in a couple of minutes, but I'll just